In what direction are Southampton going to go? Because after 3 months in charge, Nathan Jones was sacked and Southampton remain bottom of the league, 4 points adrift of safety. Our chief football correspondent, Alex Crook, joins us live this morning. Alex, good morning to you. Tell us about Jesse Marsch, sacked by Leeds, but in the frame at Southampton. Is that right?
Good morning. Yeah, I have to say some of those comments Leeds fans are making about their prospective new manager were echoed by Southampton fans when they appointed Nathan Jones. So no real surprise that honeymoon period didn't last very long. Southampton looking for their third manager of the season. And Jesse Marsch, as we reported yesterday on talkSPORT, very much a contender for that job. It echoes Dean Smith, doesn't it, when he left Aston Villa, pitched up at Norwich. Actually, his last game as Villa manager and his first as Norwich boss were against Southampton. And one of Jesse Marsch's first games, if he gets this job, would be against Leeds. Southampton play Chelsea in the Premier League this weekend. Their next Premier League game is against Marsch's old club. Now, on the face of it, this looks a bit of a strange move, picking up a manager from a relegation rival, 2 wins in 17 games, paid to Jesse Marsch's tenure at Ellen Road. I think most Leeds fans were calling for that change by the end of his reign. But if you dig a little bit deeper, he's a Red Bull disciple like Ralph Hasenhuttl, who obviously had a very successful 3-year period at Southampton. I think the board feel that his style of play would fit the current squad, that the high pressing, I think they feel they've got players, particularly the signings they made in January, that would mould into that. And he's a positive character, isn't he? Whereas Nathan Jones was a very divisive character with the stuff that he was saying pre and post-match and maybe a little bit too combative. What you get from Jesse Marsch is that air of positivity. And he's been there and got the T-shirt. He did keep Leeds in the Premier League last season when I think, and I know Simon does as well, they would have gone down under Marcelo Bielsa.
Yeah,
so,
but, I mean, the fact remains though, Alex, and Simon, correct me if I'm wrong, I would have thought many Southampton fans will be saying this, why, how can you not be good enough for Leeds but be good enough for Southampton? Where's the sense in that?
Styles make fights, don't they? They'll look at it differently. I mean, the Southampton fans will run that argument, and then we'll run a different argument by saying Styles make fights. Maybe he's the right person for that environment, given the damage that Nathan Jones may have done in the last 6, 7, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, or however long he's there for, in terms of undermining the poor fragility of these players that can't be told a few things every now and again. Look, the bottom line is I don't like that appointment. I don't think it's a great one for Southampton, but I also think there is a real situation where these clubs are struggling to get a manager in the door, and so it becomes the best of a bad bunch. Now, I don't know what a best of a bad bunch tells you.
Best of a bad bunch? These are Premier League clubs.
I know, but these are Premier League clubs looking at the trapdoor of the Championship, looking at a situation where people aren't looking at them with the same feeling that maybe people in this country think they should and could. But I don't think it's a case of these clubs aren't trying to get the managers they want. I'd be gobsmacked if Jesse Marsch was top of Southampton's list. He may be top of the list that we can get done, and it's a sensible one
Alex,
in their mind's eye.
Is he top of the list?
I think Simon's right. I think if he is top of the list, it's because the list is not very long. Look at Leeds' situation. We know they've been turned down by at least 3 of their top targets. I think the number actually goes a lot deeper than that, which is why they're maybe looking to bring in somebody who failed at Ajax. Let's not beat around the bush. He didn't last very long as Erik Ten Hag's successor. So I can understand why Leeds fans are worried. If you look at the type of manager Southampton would like to appoint, their long-term admirers of Marcelo Gallardo, 3-time South American Coach of the Year, most recently at River Plate. I think he'd be reluctant to come into this project mid-season. Ivan Juric at Torino was on their list previously as well. But it isn't as desirable as maybe we from the inside think, because, you know, you take the guy at Rayo Vallecano who didn't want to join Leeds United. He's on the brink of possibly leading that club into the Champions League. Why would he swap that for a relegation battle? So,
Alex, just sorry to stop you there. Is Hasenhuttl been mentioned about returning to the club? Is that such a crazy idea?
I wouldn't be against that. I wouldn't be against that. I didn't feel that necessarily Ralph Hasenhuttl had run his race when he went, but I don't see that happening. I think, you know, maybe there were admiring glances cast his direction by Leeds. I think at the moment he's taken some time out. He's back in Austria. I wouldn't see a scenario necessarily where he comes back to Southampton. Then you've got the English contingent. Wayne Rooney, I believe, would be interested in coming to Southampton. He's obviously over at DC United at the moment. Has he got enough experience to come into a relegation battle? Everton obviously decided, even as a club legend, he didn't. Then you've got Frank Lampard. You've got Steven Gerrard, who I think also would be keen. But again, these are managers who've been sacked by teams in and around Southampton. Again, that tells me the list is not very deep. And what about Dean Smith? He had a relationship with Rasmus Ankersen, the sporting director of Brentford, but he's just been fired by Norwich. It's really difficult at this stage of the season, particularly when you're looking for the third manager of the campaign, particularly when you're adrift of safety. It isn't that attractive a proposition.
It isn't. And whoever's going in, Simon, will think, do you know what? How much faith have I got in these people that run this football club? As Alex says, Southampton looking for the third manager of this campaign. So Hasenhuttl come and gone. They botched up Nathan Jones. They're now groping in the dark for whoever they might be able to get now. And Jesse Marsch is one of the favourites.
Jim, if you're looking at that prospective manager going into Southampton and you look at the inexperience of that squad, I mean, Ward-Prowse is 28 years of age, most experienced player in the squad. You run down to the goalkeeper's it's a baby in goal. He's 20 years of age. He came from Man City in the summer. Honestly, everywhere in that team, you're looking at inexperience. Now, when they were in the recruitment, it's not just you can look at the managers, but you've got to look at recruitment of what was being. Now, I don't know with Hasenhuttl in the summer was really privy whether he was accepting of this, but they're not good enough because they're not experienced enough, Jim. Maybe they maybe have to go down and come back again. Nobody wants to see that.
Well, Simon, you weren't having Hasenhuttl then. No. You certainly won't be having him now.
No, not really. I mean, I think ultimately it's not an ideal situation for Southampton to find themselves in, and I don't think you can just take the manager out of the equation when you're talking about recruitment. That's a silly scenario. Managers are involved in recruitments. They will be complicit in recruitment as much as the people that ultimately sign the cheques. Challenge for these managers of club football now is the world has turned. You can no longer go to Fireman Sam. Right, that door is now gone. Those ideas that the Pulises of the world and the Sam Allardyces
is that door shut?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's run its course now. I don't think you can look at the contingent that everyone spin the wheel, land on Steve Bruce, spin the wheel, land on Neil Warnock, spin the wheel, land on Sam Allardyce or Tony Pulis. Those have gone. So then you've got the other side.
Spin the wheel, land the guy from River Plate. Spin the wheel and you land on Jesse Marsch.
Well,
there are those out there this morning that would say Allardyce. You kidding? Get him in.
So
maybe.
What we're talking about is the age-old tried. Tested methodology is now becoming diminished, and then you've got to find some bit more creative. So you look around Europe and you look at the managers that you want, they don't want to come. So then you're sat in a situation where the quadrant of the wheel that you're landing your little white ball in on the roulette table is who? Or someone that's knows the Premier League but is actually been booted out of the club that's a rival to stop us from getting relegated. I think that's where you're landing now.
Do you know what? I think working with Nathan Jones, I don't know him, but I think they suddenly realised how good Hasenhuttl was. Because I do believe he's an outstanding manager. I'm very different to Simon. I was very impressed, went to watch him work. Man who knows what he wants. And they were young players, and he was holding their hand. And that hand was taken away.
But that time's gone, Martin.
It's gone, but it was a mistake by Southampton.
But that's no comfort to Southampton fans listening this morning.
No, but I'd go and get him and bring him back. That's what I'd do.
Never go back.
I went back and won 3 Premier League trophies and 3 FA
You might be
Cups.
the exception that doesn't necessarily prove a rule, and you're not a manager.
I'm not.
And a manager is vast. I know you don't make this correlation very easily, Martin, but there is a massive difference between a player and a manager. So taking a manager back is very different from taking a player back.
Did you go back for
the same manager went back to Real Madrid
time in your reign?
No, but I brought managers back to the club that had played for the club that were mistakes because I felt that it was a natural fit like Peter Taylor. And you know my view on Peter Taylor, normal wisdom in my dugout. And doing his impression very well of it. But the point is that I do think, ironically, as much as we make these guys, these wonderful football clubs in our Premier League, this absolute blueprint for who would want to work for them, there isn't now. And what you've got to do is look at the reality of how good these managers are. Dean Smith went to Norwich, got bombed out of Villa, went to Norwich, got them relegated. They're stinking out the Championship, and that's an answer. Chris Wilder got bombed out of Sheffield United because he couldn't play nicely with the owner after a period of time. Goes to Middlesbrough.
He did have a very good first season, though. You can't dispute that.
Then let's live in history then. Let's live in history.
Let's look at, if we're going to look at the bad, let's go to the good.
Well, that's
things.
fine.
Very dismissive
but the fact, well, you have to look at you have to look at the reality of what someone is and what you think they are, rather than what the imagination might have been once upon a time.
Never
by that logic, why don't we dig someone up from the 70s?
Do you know, if Ancelotti never went back to Real Madrid, he wouldn't have been smoking that cigar, would he, last summer? So it doesn't work in every sense. He went back.
I don't understand your point.
We went back to Real Madrid and he was incredibly successful.
Are we right in thinking, Alex, as things stand, it's a toss-up between Jesse Marsch for Southampton,
let's compare Madrid to Southampton,
or the fella at River Plate?
Said never go back.
Well, I think Gallardo's a difficult one to do. I think the club are aware of that. I think it's probably more of a toss-up at this moment in time between Jesse Marsch and Ruben Selles, who we know is taking training in the build-up to the Chelsea game at the weekend. He was one of the backroom staff that survived the cold, all of the guys that Nathan Jones brought with him to St Mary's were relieved of their duties along with the manager. So I think there is a possibility. Sellés is popular with the players, that if they don't believe they can find the right person on a long-term basis, that Sellés could be kept in caretaker charge, maybe for longer than just a few days. They are trying to draw up a short list, but as we mentioned there, the pool that they're fishing in isn't particularly deep. On Martin's point about Hasenhuttl, I think he did a brilliant job at Southampton. He wasn't being backed by the owners. Him and Martin Semmens, the chief executive, basically kept the club afloat in the Premier League with both hands tied behind their back. But his relationship with the players wasn't great by the time he left. So I'm not sure that dressing room would welcome him back. Simon Jordan might say that's a reason to reappoint him. On recruitment, of course, the manager has his say on recruitment. The one position that Ralph Hasenhuttl made it clear to Sport Republic, and Rasmus Ankersen, the sporting director, who's a lot to blame, in my opinion, for what's gone wrong at Southampton. The one player he wanted was a centre-forward, Ralph Hasenhuttl. He didn't get that. That's why they're struggling. They have now brought in a centre-forward in January. Could well be too little too late.
I mean,
he didn't want Ings to go, though, did he? And he didn't want Højbjerg to go. And those players he was pushing to get their contract sorted, and the club went a different route.
Hasenhuttl was?
No. Hasenhuttl wanted them, but the club weren't able to pay their wages. Obviously, Southampton have been a fantastic story of developing players over many years. And
the players wanted to leave Southampton. Højbjerg wanted to go to Tottenham.
Yeah.
So Hasenhuttl can bark at the moon as much as he wants. If the players aren't on board...
But he lost... Look at what he lost when we look at his piece in total, how well he did at the club.
Yeah, no doubt, Simon, the players have got to look at themselves this morning and think, why are we in this position we're in because we haven't performed on the pitch? But the Southampton board hasn't exactly covered itself in glory either, has it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the owner. I mean, you would have anticipated that. I think they've had a strange set of ownership models for 4 or 5 years. Everyone anticipated when the Chinese ownership came in, it was going to set the place on fire, upwards, and it didn't. They were forced into selling Virgil van Dijk 6 months after they took ownership, and they got decent money for that. And it's been a decline since then. Then you've got this new guy coming through the door, and I'm not entirely sure he's enamoured with what he's got. Because ultimately he's bought a football club, he's got plenty of money, and all he's had is nothing but aggravation since he walked in the door. That goes with the territory.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that Ralph Hasenhuttl didn't do a reasonable job, because I thought at times when you recover from the beating that he got at Leicester City, I thought it was remarkable. The fact that I was so proud of Southampton and him when they beat Leicester City in that return fixture after the 9-0 drubbing, which they were humiliated in. I thought that's what coming back from adversity is. I didn't admire him crying on the touchline when they beat Liverpool. I didn't think that was particularly admirable. I thought that was showing the world your backside. But I do think that it had run its course. Now, the fact it's run its course and they've replaced it with a fool doesn't mean it hadn't run its course. They should have perhaps considered the appointment of Nathan Jones more in the rounds. It doesn't mean that taking Hasenhuttl out was necessarily the wrong decision based upon what Alex is saying, which is a dressing room that's fallen away from him. Your next appointment had to be a decent one. And clearly with Nathan Jones, they made the wrong decision.
It was a bungle.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.